part two, where we're talking about the brain, we're going to argue different types of intelligence. Last time we had talked about kinesthetic, but now let's start with, for recap, general intelligence, which we call G. General intelligence, as I said, we're talking about brain and how to maximize your brain, basically. So this is part two. So general intelligence will actually help you in terms of giving you what they call a broad, overarching measure in terms of enhancing your cognitive abilities. So it will help you in terms of intellectual capacity, thoughts, and various aspects of cognitive skills, yeah? And then we also have what they call verbal linguistic intelligence. As I said, this type of intelligence involves strong aptitude for language, including reading, writing, and speaking, and even understanding nuances in terms of communication. So people with high verbal linguistic intelligence excel in areas like writing, storytelling, and even public speaking, yeah? And then we have what they call logical or mathematical intelligence. Individuals with strong mathematical intelligence excel in analytical basically, and problem-solving tasks, yeah? And they are skilled in what they call critical thinking and reasoning and even mathematical operations. So this type of intelligence basically is often associated with scientific and even mathematical endeavors, yeah? And then there's what we call visual spatial intelligence. Visual spatial intelligence relates to the ability to perceive and manipulate visual information in one's mind. So people with high visual spatial intelligence are actually skilled in tasks like map reading or even drawing, even visualizing concepts, yeah? And then there's what they call, which I had ended on part one, bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence. So this type of intelligence involves physical coordination and control. So people with strong bodily kinesthetic intelligence are actually often skilled with activities like sports, dance, and even fine motor skills, yeah? And then sometimes what we call musical intelligence as well. Musical intelligence is related to an individual's ability to recognize and even create and appreciate musical patterns and structures, yeah? So this type of intelligence is common in, among musicians and composers, with those with deep appreciation of music, the Beethoven and stuff, people like that, yeah, the MJs, you know them. And then if you're arguing in terms of what they call interpersonal intelligence involves the ability to understand and interact effectively with other people. So people with high interpersonal intelligence are often skilled in social situations such as empathy, leadership, and even conflict resolution. What does that tell you? It tells you that someone may be gifted in some of these arenas, and perhaps even as we delegate people to do certain tasks, we should be mindful of the kind of intelligence that comes off easily from them. This is what we call intrapersonal intelligence. Intrapersonal intelligence relates to self-awareness and self-understanding. So individuals with strong interpersonal intelligence are in tune with their own emotions and motivation and even values, yeah? Then there's what we call naturalistic intelligence, yeah? In terms of naturalistic intelligence is basically the ability to recognize and categorize patterns in nature, including those related to flora and fauna and ecosystems. It's often associated with those who have a strong connection with the natural world, yeah? So I think you're noticing that no one is an island of all things, and perhaps we should be mindful that each one of us can be the best at whatever God has destined us to be. Not so. This is what we call existential intelligence. This form of intelligence is more abstract in terms of ideas, philosophical, and even existential questions about the nature of existence, life, and even death, and it's often associated with individuals who contemplate deep philosophical and spiritual questions, yeah? And then there's what they call emotional intelligence, yeah, which is very popular. Emotional intelligence refers to the ability to recognize and understand and manage and even utilize emotions effectively. So it plays a crucial role in terms of what they call social interactions, decision making, and the overall well-being, yeah? And then you could also argue in terms of what they call cultural intelligence. Some people call it CQ. Cultural intelligence pertains to one's ability to understand and adapt to different cultures in terms of working effectively, in terms of diverse cultural settings. It also involves cultural awareness, empathy, and even cultural communication skills. Yeah, so listen, it's important to note that, as I said, these types of intelligence is actually not mutually exclusive, yeah, and the individual can actually possess a combination of these abilities, yeah. So moreover, the concept of intelligence, as I said, continues to evolve, and contemporary models of intelligence often emphasize multiple intelligences and importance of developing a wide range of skills and even abilities. Okay, so as we argue how to adapt or how to make our brains perform at its best, as I said, this basically would depend on specific cognitive functions in terms of the abilities that we are trying to argue, and it's important to know that the brain's performance can actually change, as I said, over time due to various factors including involvement, aging, and individual variability. So I'm going to give you some empirical evidence in terms of aspects that have to do with the cognitive performance of the brain. As I said, the one that must be comprehended is the early childhood, that is between 0 and 5 years. Empirical evidence suggests that the brain undergoes rapid development in terms of that development during that time. Remember, I'm just emphasizing what we argued in our volume, or what you want to consider section 1 of this discussion. And then the adolescence part also, late teens to early 20s. Research shows that the brain continues to develop during this adolescence time, and particularly in areas related to high order thinking, impulse control, decision making, and this is a period of enhanced learning and adaptability. Yeah, and then during what they call young adulthood, that 20s and early 30s. Yeah, many cognitive functions, including memory or even processing speed and problem solving, tend to peak in the late teens to early 30s. Yeah, and this is often considered the period of what they call optimal cognitive performance. And I think it's very evident that many people are usually hired at that time in terms of the peak performance. And then mid-adulthood, between 40s and 50s. Empirical evidence suggests that crystallized intelligence, as I say, which involves accumulated knowledge or even verbal abilities, remains relatively stable or even improves in the mid-adulthood. Yeah, and then of course, if you argue that in terms of what they call older adulthood, that is 60 and beyond, it's important to note that while some cognitive functions may actually decline, maybe due to what diminishing returns, but with age, the others remain stable or even may improve. For example, verbal knowledge or even vocabulary or even wisdom tend to be maintained, and some individuals continue to engage in lifelong learning. Yeah, especially we Africans are very good at that. The argument that the more they get the gray hair, the more they are considered wise. Yeah. So as I said, it's very, very important to recognize that cognitive development and aging are highly variable among individuals, and factors, as I said, such as genetics, lifestyle, environmental influences can actually significantly impact cognitive performances at different ages. Yeah. So additionally, in terms of arguing on best performance, as I said, it will vary on individual goals and life circumstances. Yeah. So it's important to note that research basically is still ongoing as far as cognitive aging, but fundamentally it has shown that the brain can actually continue to adapt and learn through life, and that cognitive decline is not inevitable. Yeah. So staying mentally active, engaging in learning, maintaining a healthy lifestyle can actually help support your cognitive function at any age. Okay. So please understand that the concept, as I'm saying, when the brain is that it depends on your specific cognitive ability, and it will vary sometimes because of the age, and the peak may not necessarily depend on what age you are, but on the different lifestyles or the variations of the potential of the learning and adaptation that is actually considered. So if you had to argue in terms of brain boosters, for example, there are those who argue in terms of brain boosters. Brain boosters to help the brain, also known as what they call nootropics, or what they call cognitive enhancers. These substances or strategies that actually are believed to improve cognitive functions, or in terms of memory or creativity or even motivation. It's important to know that the effectiveness and the safety of the various brain boosters can actually vary, and not all are supported by robust scientific evidence. But I'm going to give you some common brain boosters and strategies to help you understand. Caffeine is a very good start. Caffeine is found in coffee and tea, and is a well-known stimulant that can actually enhance alertness and even focus. It's a temporary brain booster that can actually improve cognitive performance and even reduce fatigue. Yeah. And then nutrition, a balanced diet with essential nutrients such as omega-3 fatty acids, or what they call oxidants, and vitamins are crucial for brain health. Nutrient-rich foods can actually support memory and cognitive function. Yeah. And then aerobic exercise. Yeah. In terms of what they call regular physical activity, particularly aerobic exercise, can improve blood flow to the brain in terms of increasing the production of what they call neurotrophic factors that promote overall cognitive health. And then sometimes you could also look at what they call mental stimulation. Engaging in mentally stimulating activities like puzzles, like brain games, and reading can actually help maintain cognitive function, and may actually delay what they call age-related cognitive decline. Yeah, and you cannot underestimate sleep. Quality sleep is what I'm talking about. Yeah, is essential for cognitive functions and even memory consolidation. Lack of sleep can actually impair attention, so in terms of decision making and even problem solving ability. So you have to have a balance. Yeah, and then control your stress management. Chronic stress can have a detrimental impact on cognitive function. Techniques like meditation, mindfulness, relaxation exercises can actually help to manage stress and even improve what they call cognitive performance. Yeah, and then also you could also argue in terms of what they call cognitive training. Brain training programs that and apps, as I said, are designed to enhance good memory, attention, and even problem solving skills. So while effectiveness of some programs is debated, they can actually be helpful in terms of certain individuals. So you should also explore some of those. And then sometimes we could argue in terms of what they call pharmacological nootropics. Yeah, some drugs and supplements such as what they call modafinil, or what they call restams, and what they call kingo, or even biloba are often considered nootropics, and they may offer short-term cognitive enhancement, but their long-term safety and efficacy are subject to debate. So that's something you may have to go wisely on. And then lifestyle and factors, staying socially active, maintaining strong relationships, and even engaging in activities that provide a sense of purpose can actually help what they call positive effects in terms of cognitive health. And then another important aspect is what they call mindfulness in terms of meditation. Yeah, mindfulness meditation in terms of practices that can actually enhance focus, attention, and emotional regulation, which are essential for, again, cognitive function. An interesting one which also helps is music. Think about that, music. Some researchers suggest that listening to certain types of music, especially classical music, may actually temporarily boost cognitive performance, particularly in tasks that requires special temporal reasoning, for example. Another aspect is what they call prescription medications. In some cases, healthcare professionals may actually prescribe medications like what they call ADHD medications, or what they call antidepressants, to improve cognitive functions in specific medical conditions. But what is important for you to comprehend, that it's important to approach brain boosting strategies with caution and consult, as I said, with healthcare professionals, especially when considering supplements or even medication. So what works for one individual may not work the same way like for another person. So additionally, having what they call a holistic approach in terms of brain health, including a healthy lifestyle, adequate sleep, stress management, often is more effective in promoting long-term cognitive functions. Yeah, and that's a shame when I get to hear that some students take coke or cocaine or stuff like that to boost their ability to learn. But anyway, my recommendation will be look for a book called Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Fowler. Moonwalking with Einstein is a popular non-fiction book where the author actually explores the world of memory, specifically the techniques that are used by memory champions. Joshua Fowler, engaged in what they call the science of the memory, and recounts his personal journey and trains in terms of memory, and eventually competing in the U.S. Memory Championship. That book explored what they call memory techniques, such as the method of locking and memory palaces, and how these techniques can actually be used to help you remember vast amounts of information, including lists, numbers, and even more. It's an engaging and informative book for anyone interested in memory improvement and even cognitive abilities. Yeah, I usually recommend that to a number of people. Moonwalking with Einstein, as I said, it will give you insights in terms of advice on memory improvement and the art of remembering. Yeah, I'm going to give you some tips and advice from that book. Tip number one is develop what they call a memory palace. John 4, of course, introduces the concept of memory palace, what they call the method of loci. This technique involves associating the items you want to remember with specific locations in a familiar place, such as your home. By mentally walking through this place and visualizing the items, you can remember them more effectively. Yeah. Another is what they call create vivid mental images. Yeah. To remember information, it's essential to make it memorable. So create vivid, unusual, and even absurd mental images that connect the items you want to remember. So the more outrageous and distinct the images, the easier they are for you to recall. I'm giving you the tricks of how to remember. Number 3, use what they call mnemonic devices. 4 discusses various mnemonic devices okay, that can aid memory, such as acronyms, rhymes, or even associations. So these techniques can make information more accessible and even more memorable. Yeah, and then there's what we call chunk information. Break down complex information into smaller, more manageable chunks. Our brains are more efficient at processing and retaining information when it is organized this way. And then number 5, practice repetition. It's important. Regular practice is crucial for improving memory. Engage in memory exercises and quizzes to challenge your memory and develop your recall abilities. And then number 6 is attention and focus. Paying close attention to the information you want to remember is essential. So avoid distractions and multitasking when trying to encode information into memory. Yeah? And then number 7, understand the meaning. Try to understand the meaning of the information you are trying to remember. A deeper comprehension of the content can aid memory retention. Okay, and then number 8, spatial repetition. John 4 mentions the benefit of spaced repetition, a technique that involves revisiting and reviewing information at increasing intervals. So this approach can help reinforce memory over time. And then number 9, use the memory palace for lists. So to remember long lists, use your memory palace to visualize the items, one in a specific order within the palace. So as you mentally walk through the palace, you can recall each item. Yeah. Number 10, also engage in storytelling. John 4 suggests using storytelling techniques to remember sequences of events or even information. This approach creates what they call a narrative that is easy for you to remember. And then number 11, test yourself. Regularly quiz yourself on what you've learned or what you want to remember. Testing reinforces memory and highlights areas that need improvement. And then number 12, set goals and challenges. Challenge yourself with memory goals and tasks. Competing in memory championship or even setting what they call personal records can actually be a motivating way to improve your memory. Yeah. And so it's important, as I said, that John 4 in his book not only explores these memory techniques but also shares his personal journey as he trained for and even completed the US memory championship. As I said, his grandmother was sick and couldn't remember. He had dementia. She couldn't remember, and so he dedicated, out of pain, he dedicated his life to training his memory to remember everything, and that's how he came up with winning the US memory competition. So as I said, we could borrow a lot from him, and it could help us in terms of enhancing memory using techniques, as I said, employed by memory champions around the world as well. I'm going to give you some of the experiences and advice of different memory champions, and some of the pickouts that you may want to look in terms of comprehending and understanding how to boost or even how to strengthen your memory. There's what I call studied memory techniques. So you need to explore memory techniques commonly used by memory champions, such as methods of loci, or what they call mnemonic devices, and even memory palaces. So there are books and even online resources dedicated to these techniques, like for example the memory book by Harry Loyan and even Jerry Lucas. Look at that book. You may also want to talk about what they call practice regularly, again as a component. Consistent practice is key to improving memory. Dedicate time to memory exercises and challenges to hone your skills. Yeah, and these are many memory training apps and even websites that can provide structured exercises. And then another important aspect is joining some of these memory competitions. Yeah, participating in memory competitions, even at local, even regional level, can actually be an excellent way to push your memory skills in new heights and even learn from other memory enthusiasts. Yeah, and then also seek what they call mentoring. If possible, connect with experienced memory champions and mentors who can provide personalized guidance and share their knowledge and even techniques. Yeah. And then another important aspect is read memory improvement books. Yeah, explore books and publications on memory improvement. In addition to books like Moonwalking with Einstein, consider other titles like The Memory Palace by Louis Smile, or even The Memory Code by Lynn Carey, which delve into various aspects of memory and memorization techniques. Yeah, And then it's also important to learn from memory forums and communities. Yeah, online forums, as I said, and communities dedicated to memory improvement can actually be very valuable in terms of engaging, sharing experiences, gaining insights, and even receiving feedback from others who are passionate about memory techniques. Yeah. Another important aspect is expand your memory palace. Super important, because I'm just getting it from the different books that different people comprehend. Expand your memory palace. As you become more proficient in using memory palaces, consider expanding your mental spaces to accommodate more information. Visualize new locations and revisit familiar ones with fresh associations. Yeah, super important. And then aspects to do with customized techniques. Adapt memory techniques that suit your individual preferences and learning styles. Tailoring these techniques to your needs can actually make them more effective. Yeah. And then also important to note is focus on weak areas. Yeah. Identify specific memory challenges or weaknesses and target them with dedicated practice. For example, if you struggle with remembering numbers, focus on number memorization techniques. They will help you to comprehend that. I'm just giving you how you're going to beat yourself into graduating what they call summa cum laude. Yeah. So, and then stay updated. Keep up with the latest research and development in terms of memory improvement. New insights and techniques are continuously emerging in terms of the field of what they call cognitive psychology. So those are things that are super important. And then teaching others. Very soon I'll talk about what they call Bloom's taxonomy. But teaching others, teaching memory techniques to others can actually reinforce your own understanding in terms of the mastery of these methods. Explaining memory strategies to someone else can actually be an effective way of solidifying your own knowledge. Yeah. And then talk about record and reflect. Yeah. Maintain sometimes a journal, even a digital log or document of your memory training processes. I have with me here a diary. Yeah, very empty but with some information there. And I'm not reading. I'm trying to help myself remember, prompt myself, and this is something you could do. So train yourself, have that organization ability within you, so that you know how to comprehend some of the things. So remember, my friends, that improving memory is an ongoing process that requires dedication, it requires persistence, and it is essential to set realistic goals and track your progress over time. So by consistently applying your memory techniques and learning from experienced memory champions or even publications, you can enhance your memory and cognitive ability. So you are not dense, you are not shallow, you are not stupid, you are the best that God has destined you to be. Dr. King taught us so many things. You may not be a pine on top of a hill, but be a shrub in the valley, but be the best side of the reel of the shrub on the side of the reel. Look at books like The Memory Palace by Louis Smile, The Memory Code by Lynn Kelly. Yeah. In this book of The Memory Palace by Louis Smile, they argue and say exploration of memory techniques. The Memory Palace delves into what they call various memory techniques, especially the method of loci, okay, and the use of memory palaces. Yeah, this book basically explains the history and the principles of these techniques and how they can actually be applied to improve your memory. Yeah, in terms of practical application, Louis Smile offers practical guidance on creating and using memory palaces. He actually provides step-by-step instructions on constructing your own mental spaces and associating information with specific locations within those spaces. Yeah, in terms of real-world examples, the book basically includes real-life examples, as I said, of people using memory techniques to achieve impressive feats, such as memorizing the entire decks of cards or a lengthy list of information. These stories illustrate the practicability and effectiveness of memory techniques. Yeah, you could just do it, you flip a deck of cards and you could remember every part or every place which card was standing or coming from where. So it also helps in terms of memory improvement strategies. In addition to memory palaces, the book, this particular book I'm talking about, explores other memory improvement strategies, including mnemonic devices and even visualization techniques. It highlights the facility of these methods in terms of various learning and memorization scenarios. Yeah, and then another interesting one is what they call the Memory Code by Lynn Kelly. Yeah. Now, in terms of this, if you're arguing that in terms of cultural and historical perspective, the Memory Code takes a unique approach by exploring the cultural and historical aspects of memory techniques. It devolves into the practice of Asian cultures, including indigenous peoples of Australia who use intricate memory systems. Yeah, so you may want to comprehend that. And he also argues in terms of what they call oral tradition and even memory. So Lynn Kelly discusses, for example, how many ancient societies relied on oral traditions in terms of songliness and complex mnemonic systems to pass down knowledge and stories. Yeah, even in Africa, it's very evident. So this offers insight into the use of memory techniques and indigenous cultures. Yeah, so it's very, very important for you to understand. And then you also may want to comprehend the book called Stonehenge and Other Monuments. The book, in terms of that comprehension, by the way, the Stonehenge and Other Monuments, in terms of the book, that the book basically discusses the use of ancient monuments and Stonehenge as memory aids, proposing that these structures served as memory libraries. So this perspective challenges the convention of use of these historical sites. Yeah, and then I'm still emphasizing on that particular book because the comprehension is that also in terms of the connection to modern learning. So the memory code connects what they call ancient memory techniques to modern education and memory improvement. It also suggests incorporating these ancient methods in terms of contemporary learning, which enhance memory and even cognitive skills, as I said. And in terms of Lynn Kelly's book, also it also gives you what they call the interdisciplinary approach. Yeah, so basically Kelly takes us or walks us through what they call an interdisciplinary approach, drawing from fields such as anthropology or even archaeology and even cognitive psychology. Yeah, so this approach provides a holistic understanding of memory techniques and their historical significance. Yeah, so if you look at those books plus the other ones that I talked about, I'm telling you, they will help you, they will blend you, they will help you to comprehend some of the things. But even just going through our YouTubes and listening to them as often as you probably would want to will give you that edge in terms of comprehending. So the Memory Palace, as I said, focuses on practical applications and modern use of the memory techniques, while the Memory Code explores the historical culture and interdisciplinary aspects of memory systems. So reading these books, as I said, will give you a deeper understanding of memory techniques and their potential to enhance memory and even learning in various contexts. Yeah, I promise that we'll talk about Bloom's taxonomy, which is a super important aspect in terms of education today. Bloom's taxonomy is basically a hierarchical framework that basically classifies education objectives and cognitive skills into a series of levels. Yeah, it was developed by a guy called Benjamin Bloom in a group of educational psychologists in the 1950s and revised in the 2000s. Yeah, so the taxonomy is used to categorize and even structure learning objectives, making it a valuable tool for educators in terms of designing curriculum, assessment, and even learning activities. So Bloom's taxonomy consists of 6 levels, from lower order thinking skills to higher order thinking skills. And I'm going to just mention a few of those so you comprehend what we're talking about. Number 1 is the aspect called knowledge or remembering. In terms of description, this is the lowest level of cognitive skills, and it involves recalling facts, information, or basic concepts. Lowest, think about that. Keywords: define, identify, list, recall, recognize, state, or even memorize. An example is recalling the capital cities of different countries. That is the lowest level. Yeah. Second, from lower, is what they call comprehension, or what they may want to say as understanding. So in terms of description, comprehension involves demonstrating an understanding of the material and explaining it in one's own words, okay, interpreting information and even summarizing it. Yeah, and the keywords here would be things like describe, explain, illustrate, summarize, interpret, or even paraphrase. Yeah, an example, for example, would be explaining the main themes of a novel, such as that. Yeah. And then the third one from down is what they call application, or some people call it applying. In terms of description, it would mean applying goes beyond understanding and requires the ability to use acquired knowledge in a new and practical situation. I think now you're seeing, the depth that is involved in terms of the learning. Yeah, and the keywords here would be applying, solving, using, demonstrating, implementing, and even employing. Yeah, an example is solving mathematical problems using learned equations and even concepts. Are we seeing how the development is taking place? And then the fourth one is what they call analysis or analyzing in terms of description. So analysis involves breaking down complex information into constituent parts, identifying patterns or relationships, and drawing conclusions. Yeah, so that's another super important one. In terms of the keywords, you need to comprehend things like analyzing, comparing, contrasting, examining, and even depreciating, or even categorizing. In terms of an example, you analyze the causes and the effects of, for example, of a historical event. Yeah, and then in terms of number 5 is what they call synthesis. Synthesis is what they call creating. Under that, we are talking about what they call description. So synthesis is the ability to combine elements or ideas to create something new. So it requires creativity and the development of original concepts. The keywords here would be things like creating, designing, composing, developing, inventing, and even planning, for example. So by way of an example, you're designing a new product based on existing technology, and the customer needs, would involve something like that. And then the sixth one is what they call evaluation or evaluating, and this basically is, in terms of description, evaluation is the highest level of cognitive skill. It involves making judgments, for example, assessment or decisions based on critical thinking and criteria. And the keywords here will be evaluating, judging, assessing, comparing, critiquing, and even justifying. And that is super important. In terms of an example, you may want to look at it in terms of assessing the effectiveness of a marketing campaign or even making recommendations for improvement. And that is very substantive for those of you who are doing research, not so at high levels as well. So in addition to the 6 cognitive levels of Bloom's taxonomy, often includes a cross-cutting dimension that represents what they call metacognitive knowledge, which involves understanding one's own thinking and even learning processes. So under metacognitive, it basically plays what they call a crucial role in effective learning and even problem solving. So please understand that educators usually use Bloom's taxonomy to design learning objectives and assessment and instructional activities and that align with desired levels of cognitive rigor. And basically it also helps in aiding and fostering what they call high order thinking skills and critical thinking abilities in students, which are essential for meaningful learning and even problem solving, as I said. Now, if you're to just go a little bit deeper in terms of what they call metacognition, metacognition basically is a term used to describe the process of thinking about thinking. Think about that. It's basically used to describe the process of thinking about thinking. So it involves awareness and understanding of one's own cognitive processes, including the ability to plan, to monitor, and regulate one's thinking and learning. So metacognition plays a crucial role in terms of effective learning, problem solving, decision making, and self-regulated learning. I'm going to give you a little bit of some insights into what they call metacognition. One thing you must understand is what are the components of metacognition. Metacognition encompasses several key components, and one of them is what they call metacognitive knowledge. Basically, this involves understanding one's cognitive abilities, learning strategies, and factors that influence learning. So it includes awareness of strengths and weaknesses in one's thinking and problem solving. Please understand that. Number 2, it also involves what they call metacognitive control strategies. Metacognitive control strategies are techniques and approaches individuals use to regulate their cognitive processes. So this can include setting goals, planning, monitoring processes, and even evaluating outcomes. So if you're arguing in terms of metacognitive skills, you must comprehend that metacognition encompasses, as I said, a range of skills that are important for learning and problem solving. And if you have to argue that in terms of planning, you must comprehend that metacognitive planning involves setting goals, selecting appropriate strategies, and creating a plan on how to approach a task or even a problem. Effective planning obviously can enhance task performance. Everything we're talking about has to do with the brain. Maybe you need to look out for our book, Guardians of the Mind, a little bit, but predominantly here, cognitive thinking in terms of the different aspects of metacognition. In terms of monitoring one's own cognitive process is also a crucial metacognitive skill. So it involves keeping track of progress, identifying when difficulties arise, recognizing the need for adjustment. Super important, not so. And then the aspect of evaluation. After completing a task or even problem solving in terms of the process, it's important individuals with strong metacognitive skills are capable of assessing their performance and they can identify what worked well and what could actually be improved. And then aspects of what they call reflection. Metacognitive reflection involves thinking about one's thinking after learning experiences. So it allows for individuals to consider what they have learned and how they have learned it and how they apply that knowledge in the future. These are super important aspects. So this is probably one of the most important discussions that we've had, because we know it has to do with the brain and preparing you in terms of maximizing your potential. Then importance in terms of metacognition. Metacognition is an integral part, as I said, in terms of effective learning and in terms of cognitive development for several reasons. It will, number one, help you in terms of enhanced learning. By understanding your own learning processes, individuals would actually be helped more informed choices about how to study, how to read, how to engage with new information, and this leads to more efficient and even effective learning. It will also help you in terms of what they call problem solving. So metacognitive skills are invaluable in terms of giving you what they call problem solving skills. They allow individuals to approach complex issues with strategy, monitoring their progress and even adjusting their approach when necessary. And then they also give you what they call self-regulated learning. As I said, metacognition is closely linked to self-regulated learning. It empowers individuals to take control of their learning processes in terms of setting goals, in terms of managing their own learning effectively. And then the aspect of transfer of knowledge. Yeah, metacognition facilitates the transfer of knowledge and skills from one context to another. Where individuals understand how they learn, they can actually apply these strategies in terms of the various situations. Yeah, so that is super important for you to comprehend. And then the aspect of critical thinking. Critical thinking becomes super important. Yeah, in terms of effective critical thinking, it involves metacognitive reflection. It enables individuals to evaluate their thinking and even consider what they call alternative perspectives and solutions. That is another important aspect that you may need to comprehend. And then developing what they call metacognition is another component that is super important. How do you enhance that? Yeah, you have to enhance what they call metacognitive skills in terms of reflecting on your learning processes and performance, setting clear goals and objectives in terms of your learning, experimenting with different learning strategies and even approaches, you know, those are important aspects, and even seeking feedback from instructors, for example, or from peers, or even from mentors, and then engaging, as I said, in self-assessment and evaluation of your learning experiences. Super important again. So those are super important aspects because they'll give you a balanced view of self-evaluation of sorts. So metacognition, as I said, is an essential component of lifelong learning and cognitive development. It will empower you to become more effective, more efficient as a learner, more effective as a critical thinker, more effective as a problem solver. So by continually developing these metacognitive skills, you will help yourself to achieve better in your own education and even in your personal what? In your personal growth. Another interesting argument when you're talking about education here is what they call pedagogy. Pedagogy basically is the art and science of teaching. It basically plays a pivotal role in enhancing learning. In terms of effective pedagogy, it's designed to optimize the learning processes for students, for example, and facilitating their understanding and retention of information. And I'm going to break down a little bit of how pedagogy can actually enhance your learning. It will enhance in terms of what they call adaptive teaching methods. Yeah, so pedagogical approaches are actually tailored to needs and abilities of students. Yeah, so in a sense that effective teachers will adapt their methods to suit the learning styles and backgrounds of their learners, ensuring that instruction is engaging and even comprehensible. Is extremely important. Number two is what they call active learning. Pedagogy promotes what they call active learning. So while students are actually actively engaged in learning processes rather than passively receiving information, techniques such as group discussions, hand-on activities, problem-solving tasks encourage students to participate and interact with the subject matter. Yeah, super important. And then number three is what they call clear communication. Okay, in terms of that, effective pedagogical practices emphasize clear communication. So teachers use language and even explanations that are accessible to students, reducing ambiguity and even confusion, and this helps students to grasp complex concepts and even ideas more easily. Not so. Another super important aspect is what they call assessment of learning. Under this, assessment becomes an integral part of pedagogy. In terms of regular formative assessment, it provides feedback on both students and teachers, enabling adjustments in terms of your teaching method and learning strategies to enhance student understanding. Okay, and then another aspect is what they call motivation and engagement. Yeah, so pedagogical techniques basically aim to motivate and even encourage students through the use of what they call real-world examples. In terms of relatable content, interactive activities, teachers can actually capture students' interest and even enthusiasm in terms of the learning. Yeah, and then also super important is fostering what they call critical thinking. So basically, pedagogy encourages critical thinking and problem solving. So it equips students with skills to evaluate information, make informed decisions, and apply their knowledge in diverse contexts. Yeah. So these are super important aspects. And then another important aspect would be in terms of incorporation of technology, which is something that you need to comprehend even as a country. Pedagogy has actually adapted to the digital age of incorporating technology as a tool of learning enhancement. Visual classrooms, for example, online resources, interactive software can actually support and enrich the learning experiences. Yeah. Another super important aspect is what they call diversity and even inclusion. So in pedagogy, we promote what they call inclusive education by addressing the diverse needs and backgrounds of students, inclusive teaching practices to ensure that every student has the opportunity to learn and succeed regardless of the individual circumstance. As I said, I think it was Alvin Sweden who said the literate of the 21st century is not the one who can read or not read, the one who cannot learn, relearn. Okay, so that's super important. And then lifelong learning, the aspect of effective pedagogy instills a love for learning and cultivates skills for lifelong learning. You must learn that you're a continuous student regardless of your age. You have to acquire knowledge independently, which is crucial in terms of this rapidly evolving world. Not so. And then, as I said, reflection and self-assessment. Pedagogy will encourage you to reflect on your learning experiences and your self-assessment in terms of your progress. So this metacognitive approach will foster self-awareness and even self-regulated learning, as I said. And then another aspect is what they call professional involvement. As a teacher or perhaps other teachers are continually encouraged in terms of professional involvement or to refine their pedagogical skills and to stay updated on best practices and effective teaching in terms of the dynamic and even evolving field. That becomes super important. Yeah. And then in terms of research and evidence-based practice, again, pedagogy benefits from research and evidence-based practices. So education research informs effective teaching strategies, ensuring that these approaches are employed in a well-backed up scientific evidence form. And so basically, so as a takeaway, it's important for you to comprehend that pedagogy basically plays a central role in terms of your learning enhancement by tailoring teaching methods to all of us as students of life, promoting active learning, fostering critical thinking, creating and engaging and even motivating ourselves in terms of learning environment. So effective pedagogy will equip us with the skills and knowledge that we need to succeed in this rapidly changing world in terms of encouraging a lifelong love for learning. Yeah. So when arguing that, I know I mentioned something to do with a synthesis. So the development of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis as a framework often used in the field of education, particularly in pedagogical theory and even curriculum development, you must comprehend that this is basically associated with a philosopher called George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, and he used it as a guide to process what they call critical thinking and learning. And I'm going to show you how it is applied in terms of education: the thesis, synthesis, and then antithesis. Okay. Thesis basically is a statement or what they call an initial idea. So in the context of education, a thesis represents the initial idea, the concept of prevailing educational approach. So this might be an existing curriculum or a teaching method or a traditional education practice. So the thesis often reflects the dominant or established viewpoint within the field of education. So it serves as a starting point for analysis and critique. So basically teachers and educators begin with a thesis when planning their teaching strategies or curriculum content. That is what students are initially exposed to. Remember that. And when you're talking about an anti-synthesis in terms of challenging or opposing idea, anti-synthesis is a counterpoint to the thesis. It represents an alternative idea or a challenge to the prevailing educational approach. Okay, so in education, the anti-synthesis could actually involve questioning the effectiveness of traditional teaching methods, highlighting the limitation of current curriculum, or even proposing new pedagogical theory in terms of approach. Yeah. So antithesis basically serves as a means of critique and encourages educators and students to consider alternative viewpoints and approaches to learning, which is super important at university levels, by the way, which unfortunately sometimes doesn't happen. And then a synthesis is a resolution or what they call integration. So a synthesis is the process of reconciling the thesis and antithesis. Okay, so it involves finding a solution or resolution, a balanced approach, or a new understanding that integrates the elements, both the thesis and the antithesis. So in education, synthesis can lead to a curriculum reform, development of innovative teaching methods, or deeper understanding of pedagogical principles. So the synthesis is where, as I said, educators and students collectively arrive at a more comprehensive and refined understanding of the educational concept in question. It often leads to improvement in the educational process. Yeah, in terms of application in education, the synthesis, antithesis, and synthesis framework is employed in various educational contexts. Number one, you will need it or you will require it in terms of curriculum development. When designing curricula, educators, as I said, must start with an existing curriculum, which is a thesis, examine its strengths and weaknesses, and then propose modifications or an early new curriculum antithesis. Okay, so the synthesis results in an improved curriculum that takes the best elements from both traditional and innovative approaches. Yeah? And then if you're arguing in terms of what they call pedagogical theory, the development of pedagogical theories, educators might challenge what they call established teaching methods. What is the thesis? Which with innovative or even more effective approaches. What is the antithesis? And the synthesis results in a more comprehensive understanding of effective teaching methods and a refined pedagogical theory. I think you see what we're talking about is all related. And then enhancement of student learning. Students are encouraged to apply a thesis, antithesis, and synthesis in terms of critical thinking and argumentation. Yeah? And they are taught to analyze existing ideas, challenging them with opposing viewpoints, and then arrive at a synthesis that incorporates the strength of both perspectives. Not so. Yeah? And then policy and education reformers, policymakers, and education researchers often use this framework to analyze effectiveness of educational policies in terms of the thesis, consider alternative approaches, and then formulate improved policies in terms of the synthesis. Yeah. So this argument of the thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis model promotes critical thinking. It encourages open-mindedness and fosters deeper understanding of complex educational concepts and practices. So it is a valuable tool in educational theory, in terms of curriculum development, in terms of fostering a culture of continued improvement in education. So it's important, my friends, that the statements that I provided in terms of an argument that I'm going to propose here below, based on what I've been arguing, is a discovery that was propounded by my friend Mahiri Barunywa, doctoris, and I'm gonna share some things like what they call aphorisms, or what they call philosophical viewpoints, in terms of a discussion of what we came up in terms of a comprehension of different scholars of sorts. Yeah, I'll begin with professors. Professors are basically philosophers. Okay, and the argument we propound here is that this statement suggests that professors, particularly in higher education, play a role in guiding students to think deeply and critically about the world, okay? Similar to the way philosophers contemplate the complex ideas and even questions, yeah? I'll give an example in that context. An example would be a university philosophy professor, for example, who encourages students to explore, abstract concepts and engage in Socratic dialogue, for example, fostering critical thinking and even philosophical inquiry, yeah? And then I'll argue the second one in terms of doctors. Doctors, we argue that these are custodians, okay? These are custodians of knowledge. And the viewpoint here is, it highlights the idea that doctors are responsible for the well-being and care of their students, in terms of akin to the way custodians take care of what? Buildings or even space. So the idea here is that you take responsibility by diorganizing, by enhancing, by caring for the students, in terms of maintaining and caring, or even giving them orderliness in terms of a constructive knowledge base for them. And then master holders, we would argue them as generators of knowledge. And the statement here would imply that masters holders, they possess the specialized knowledge and skills that allow them to generate new ideas in terms of innovations, in terms of solutions that are respective to whatever field they belong to. Yeah, I'll give an example. A person with a master's degree, for example, in computer science, may develop some new software applications in terms of generating genealogical advancement or even solutions for that purpose. And then when we argue in terms of graduates, and graduates being a liability to knowledge, the argument is that many graduates, in spite of the fact that they have graduated and completed their education, they may not yet possess the skills and experience that is required to make significant contribution in terms of potentially making them substantive individuals. They hence become a liability until they gain more and more practical experience. An example is, for example, a recent college graduate entering a professional field may require a lot of on-job training experience before actually becoming even highly valuable in terms of in a context of sorts. Yeah, and then the argument that diploma holders are basically a loss to knowledge. The viewpoint here suggests that individuals with diplomas often have shorter or even less comprehensive information in the sense that they need a lot of value to be added and expertise to be added in terms of that particular field. Okay, so the example here is that for you to gain advanced experience in any medicine, in any area, for example, whether medicine or engineering, a diploma is a very, is a low level start, that although not to neglect its importance. And then the aspect of the certificate holders are argued as raw materials. The statement would connote, according to my and the Center of Critical Thinking, it would argue that certificate holders are is a basic information for knowledge, and therefore it serves as a starting point to further any kind of development and specialization. So for someone with a certificate in any specific trade would need additional training and experience to become anything in that category. So as I said, that's just an aspect of a philosophical viewpoint that has been propounded by my friend Mahiri and also boosted up by myself, but without pointing fingers and being critical of anyone in any capacity, but just perhaps to give an encouragement and a morale boosting that whichever level you're starting at, it's important for us to climb those arenas and rhymes and attain what God has actually destined us to be. I know these are simply stepping stones, and I would use the words again of Dr. King, that you may not be the pine on top of a hill to shine for everybody to see you. You may be a shrub in the valley, but be the best side of the shrub on the side of the real. And his argument is that you may not be the star, but be the moon. Okay, you may not be the sun, but be the moon. You may not be the moon, but be the star. The argument is that be the very best at whatever God has destined you to be. So my friends, once again, my name is Isaac Christopher Lubogo, reading from Sue Generis. Please visit our website at lubogo.org and suegenerisflowapp.com and be friendly. Do subscribe. It will help you get knowledge so that you can be able to shape and change your world today. Blessings, and thank you for your attention.